Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Pirate Radio, and I am your host who needs zero introduction. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am rocking it solo this time around. Had a great conversation last week. If you weren't around for it or haven't listened to it, last week's episode with Mr. Arthur in Cali, talking about immigration, and it's very kind of prescient conversation that we had. I think I mentioned that last week. And it is kind of rearing its ugly head. Not so much here in the United States, so much as it is across the pond in the UK and the land of Ire, which is currently on fire. Before we get started and get too deep into this, we are still shamelessly plugging Die Freeco. Go buy some AR parts. Go buy some cool stuff. Go support these guys. They're a small company out of New Hampshire. Use code Toxic10 to save 10% off at Die Freeco. Buy their wares. Get the stickers. Very cool stickers. It's that Tiger Claw AR grip. Anyway, support them. They'll give me a little kickback. Support us. Us, by us, I mean me, or the royal we. Whatever. You know, if you're into that sort of thing. If not, well, to each their own. Anyway, so one thing I'm going to point out here. So, the little prep that I do actually do, I like to kind of verify some, facts that are out there of stories and topics that I want to cover. There's some times where I have a pretty good idea about a story or topic that I'm covering, but I need to kind of brush up on, fine tune, if you will, of specific facts. I had talked about Alexander the Great and his conquer of Persia, modern day Iran, back in the day, and, had to brush up on some of that stuff and specifics and whatnot. And this episode is no different. But it was hard because I'm doing stories that I'm going to cover some stories tonight between what's happening over in Ireland / the UK, the Los Angeles mayor's race, the Carmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf, that trial came to a close. So these are stories that are very problematic for the left. So trying just to nail down specific little facts was very, very difficult and took a lot of effort. And some I was unable to get. And so I guess I'm putting an asterisk on some of this stuff because a lot of it, or at least a majority of the things I'm going to talk about, are things I heard on other podcasts and from other people. And, I don't know, between time constraints and other things, I just was unable to verify what they had said. So here we go. Let's start with the Carmelo Anthony trial. So if you're not familiar, Carmelo Anthony, not the basketball player. This is Carmelo with a K. Was accused and now has been convicted, was accused of stabbing Austin Metcalf at a track meet with a knife, a pocket knife of some sort. I saw it described as having a 3-inch blade with a flashlight on it, a little Walmart knife, but he stabbed him in the chest, apparently right in the heart, and Austin Metcalf passed away at the scene, died. It's a pretty straightforward, at least manslaughter, if not murder. So that trial came to a close earlier this week, in which Carmelo Anthony was found guilty. I believe the jury only deliberated for 3 hours, and he was sentenced to 35 years in prison, I think, with the possibility of parole. Now, when we're talking about, I believe both of these kids were 17 at the time. The specifics of the case seem pretty clear, cut, and dry. I didn't dive deep into the case in the court proceedings and whatnot. No cameras were allowed, things of that nature. But these are kids. So when you talk about 35 years, I saw some people commenting that he should have gotten life without parole or life, blah, 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 this, that, or the other. It warrants that. That's fair. I'm not there necessarily with a kid that as far as the police go and records go, as from what I understand, had no run-ins with the police. Yes, he murdered someone. He killed someone. He's 17 years old. And to give somebody life, or even, I even saw people calling for the death penalty. I'm not there with a 17-year-old. I don't care if he's black, white, brown, whatever it is. I'm just not there. You have this dichotomy, this juxtaposition of, people were showing pictures that I guess either Anthony had posted, Karmelo Anthony had posted, or his friends or whatever, but social media posts of him holding a gun, him, making what they would call gang signs, different things, and trying to kind of indict the young man's character, the kid's character. And I kind of understand that, but also, I mean, just look behind me, and if you're not seeing this on video, there's plenty of pictures of me with guns in the background, the foreground, holding them. I've had a whole YouTube channel of me shooting them, so it's like, that to me really is neither here nor there. And I didn't engage in that. And I get why so many people on the Twitter would engage with that and would send those out because, it's all about getting the clicks. And I guess that's how they make money or that's their thing on the Twitter. And that's fine. You can always sell your soul to anyone, to the highest bidder, the devil or whatever. That's fine. You guys can do that. That's cool. I'm not there. Leave it up to a jury of his peers. A jury which, by the way, was kind of a point of contention for a lot of the hood rats that have come out of the woodwork. And we're saying that you heard this kind of early on when they chose the jury. Yeah, there's not a single black juror, so there's no way he can get a fair trial, which is, there's obvious implications there, but there's also some deeper implications there. The obvious implication, especially if you're white, is like, so you guys are saying that no white person could be impartial, period? That for a black, in the year of our Lord, 2026, for a black man to get a fair shake, or a black woman for that matter, but in this case, a black man to get a fair shake, he must have people who look like him on the jury. Okay, well, there were some jurors that were potential jurors that were nixed for whatever reason. So it's kind of up to the community. I don't know. But the other kind of backwards implication of this whole thing is to say that him not having any black people on his jury means that were he to have black people on his jury, this is the implication. This is the other implication. This is the deeper one, is that no black person would have possibly convicted Karmelo Anthony because he stabbed a white person to death. And no black person would ever vote to convict him. That's the other implication. That's the deeper implication. And that, to me, is kind of the racial side of this is coming from one side, mind you. Mind you, a white kid was stabbed to death by a black kid. Nothing about this, like even George Floyd, even the George Floyd death, nothing about this screamed racism at the time of the incident at all. I didn't hear either side talking about, well, it was a racist thing. The only people I heard talking about a racist thing are all the hood rats that came out and either were standing outside of the courthouse or are online just making complete and utter fools of themselves. Talking about how this is, no black man can get a fair shake. He should have never put his hands on him. He should have never done this. He should have never done that. Oh, he can't just come stand where he wants. Oh, is it because he's black? Is it this, that, or the other? Look, here's the thing. Apparently part of what happened here is that Karmelo Anthony went to an opposing team's tent, which in a track meet or any sort of like tournament style setup where you're going to be there all day, teams have their own tents in which that team hangs out at their own tent, much like a huddle in a football game, if you will. You don't go to the opposing side's huddle, and if you do, it's kind of a joke, and they tell you to go away, and you're like, haha, I'm going away now. Apparently, Karmelo Anthony decided that he wasn't going away and basically said, make me, and Austin Metcalf got up and said, you need to go that way, and then he responded with some sort of like do it and see what happens, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously stabs him in the chest with a knife that he has concealed on his person on a school grounds in a track suit at a track meet. I'm not one to reinforce stupid laws of like you can't carry a pocket knife on a school because it's some sort of sacred ground in which sharp objects are not allowed, or something. I don't buy into that. But my thing is like, I played sports in high school. I never felt the need to, like, in my football pants, put a knife in there, or when we were warming up to have like a boot knife or something like that, or whatever. Like, it just is it's odd to me that you're at a sport function and you're like, I better have my fucking blade on me. They got him convicted on murder one because of that. That's why I got the murder one conviction, because it shows some sort of premeditation in that, like, you could get him on the whole, you brought a knife to the school. But me, you wouldn't have gotten me as a juror on a murder one because you brought a knife to school, especially if it was something like you always kind of had and it's just a pocket knife. Now, if you had some sort of issue with someone, you didn't normally bring the knife, and then you brought the knife, and then, of course, somebody ended up stabbed or dead, or, stabbed to death. To me, that's premeditated. But if you're carrying around a pocket knife, you're kind of known to carry around this pocket knife, not a big deal. I don't see that as premeditation. But the fact that he had the pocket knife on his person at a track meet, to me, has some sort of like premeditated value there. Like, I can get there. To me, outside looking in, this felt more like a murder two conviction. And I think the sentence kind of shows that the powers that be, I'm not sure who, I think the judge gave out the sentence. I'm not 100% sure on that. But the sentence, to me, shows that's a punishment of murder too. Not a lawyer, just play one on a podcast. But anyway, that whole trial, this whole thing is just sad on all sides. Apparently there was a GoFundMe set up for Karmelo Anthony that got somewhere in the neighborhood of like $500,000 or maybe more. I've seen varying dollar amounts, and they ended up with a public defender because that money was gone. I don't know. It's very odd. It's very sad. You have one dead kid, and you have another kid who's going to spend a very large portion of his life in prison. Assuming he does make it out of prison, it's not going to be a great life. He's going to have an asterisk on his life forever. So to me, it's just really, really sad. And I see people pointing to the culture, black culture, this, that, or the other. I don't know, man. A lot of white kids have shot up schools. I don't put that on white culture. It's like, oh, well, rap music, this, that, or the. Just stop, man. People are people. They have individual agency. They come from where they come from. The greater culture did this to them. Okay, if you're gonna say that about the greater black culture made him some violent, thug who's just looking to kill another white person, I guess there's evidence of that. But again, the flip side is, well, if that accusation holds true here, then that accusation is going to hold true when it comes to white people and shooting up schools or any number of other things that are very, very, very bad and do not pertain to me or to you, hopefully, or to anyone that you know. So again, try to keep it even. Try to keep it 100, if you will. And let's not cast aspersions upon an entire group because of one person, or cast dispersions on one person because of an entire group. I don't do that I've made that abundantly clear numerous times that I don't do that using the Israeli government and their actions and put that upon the Israeli people, nor do I put that upon all Jewish people around the world. So there's that. I do the same thing with Muslims, Arabs, whatever. The same thing goes. It's a case-by-case basis. Now, if you join a club, jihadi club or KKK or some sort of black nationalist or some bullshit like that, well, that's a different story. Now, you've joined the group. You're in a club. And not even the good kind of club. There is no good kind of club. Have you ever been to a club? They fucking suck. Bunch of dumbasses in there. Anyway, so let's touch on the Los Angeles mayor's race. So California has a unique system, maybe not unique to them, but unique to me, that when they vote, their primary is not like the Republican primary and a Democrat primary where you vote for the Republican nominee and then you vote for the Democrat nominee, and then in, September, October, November, whenever the general election is, then you vote for the specific candidate. Usually ends up being something like a Democrat versus a Republican. Instead, California does a primary with everyone in there, and the top 2 vote getters then square off in the general. It has been alleged, and it seems probable, that the reason they did this was so they could end up with 2 Democrats and no Republicans. Maybe, but it also seems like if you did that, then you would kind of split the vote of your Democrat contenders, and you only need 1 Republican in there to kind of, slide in there. But neither here nor there. This race took place between incumbent Karen Bass, who was on the job when the Palisades burned to the fucking ground and the reservoirs were completely gone. So you had Karen Bass as the Democrat incumbent Los Angeles mayor. You had a challenger who came basically almost out of nowhere, it felt like, in Spencer Pratt, who was I guess he was labeled Republican, although he was labeled as like non-denominational, if you will. And then you had a city councilor, maybe former, maybe she had to resign to run, but LA city councilor Nithya Raman, who famously, I never heard anyone bring this up, but I'd heard Adam Carolla, who is a Los Angeles native, talk about it constantly, and we play the video. Nithya Raman, when she was on the LA city council, has a viral clip in which she blames the rise in catalytic converter thefts on the car companies, more specifically Toyota. It's a fantastic clip that I realize now I should have pulled, but again, my producing skills are lacking. But anyway, in the clip, she's talking at an LA city council meeting, and she's talking basically to whoever's in the room, all 3 people outside of the council members, and she's basically talking to herself. And so she's doing that thing where it's like, right? And she says that these car companies like Toyota with the Prius are at fault because they make it so easy to steal catalytic converters. And then she says these catalytic converters are basically the same price as a MacBook. So, how many MacBooks does it take to buy a catalytic converter? And, how many MacBooks is a Prius worth? Whatever. It's just kind of an odd note. But she blames Toyota for making them easy to steal. For those of you who are not aware of what a catalytic converter does, and is placed, a catalytic converter in a car is downstream of the engine on your exhaust side, and it has a whole set of precious metals, which is why they steal them, whole set of precious metals on it that basically takes the smog away. Okay, and it makes what comes out of the tailpipe quite a bit less corrosive, less invasive, less deadly, it works some magic. And it does that on the exhaust side. So what that means is it's always under the car. At best, it's on the back side of an engine bay, in between the engine and a firewall, or between an engine and a radiator, still kind of on the downslope. And in those scenarios, you would need to pop the hood really to gain access to them. But most catalytic converters are under the vehicle, which means, and they're welded in there, they're not bolted in there. So you have a pipe that comes this way. Let's call this the exhaust side of the pipe coming down. So this would be the exhaust entry into our catalytic converter here. So it would come in here. The catalytic converter would do its thing with its precious metals, and then the exhaust continues out the back side of it. This is welded in place. This requires a battery-powered cutoff tool or a battery-powered sawzall, in which you then need to get up under the vehicle and saw off both ends to get the catalytic converter in your hand. She believes that this is Toyota's fault. Okay. This person, Nithya Raman, so the way this shakes out on day one of voting, on voting day, is you have Karen Bass, the incumbent, take somewhere in the neighborhood of 38% of the vote. So she's in. Okay, she got the lion's share of the vote. She's going to be in. Spencer Pratt comes in second day of, and he's at like 25%. Looks like he's going to come in because Nithya Raman had a horrible debate performance, and she's lagging behind somewhere in the neighborhood of 15%, if I remember correctly. Again, I'm going to point back to what I said when I started this episode, trying to find basic facts for some of these stories, for pretty much all of these stories, was very, very difficult. And I'll go back and talk about one of the things I forgot on the Karmelo Anthony Austin Metcalf thing was I was trying to find, I had heard that there were no black jurors whatsoever. It took me 4 different articles to confirm that there were no black jurors on that jury. So, back to the Los Angeles mayoral race, I could not find, and I'm sure if I dove in deep enough, what the percentages were day of. All I could find is what the percentages are now. So, Karen Bass was in. You had a 2-man race between Spencer Pratt and Nithya Raman. Spencer Pratt had right around a 9-10% lead after the end of voting on day 1. Now, of course, California has like eternal voting in which votes are going to keep coming in. Mail-in ballots, you could vote. Your vote would be counted so long as it was postmarked by the day of the election. So all of these ballots start coming in, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know it, Nithya Raman overtakes Spencer Pratt. Okay, fair enough, except the part where, because you have this you just vote and the top 2 vote getters get the votes and then they go to the runoff. The problem you're going to have with this, I mean, this is obviously blatant fraud, abuse at the very least, if not full-blown voter fraud, because what happened here, and again, this is what I could not confirm other than a day 1 summary from some LA official who was a Trump appointee, blah, 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 that the mail-in ballots they got day of were kind of like fairly even, other than Karen Bass got more than the other 2, Pratt and Raman. What I could not find in the things that I had heard, and people that I have trust a little bit, or quite a bit, that their word is pretty good and that they did the homework, is that you had somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40,000 ballots that came in post-election day. All of them went for Nithya Raman. None of them went for Spencer Pratt. Also, none of them went for Karen Bass. So you're trying to tell me that we just had these votes hanging out that just happened to all go for the 3rd place candidate who, even according to the betting markets, the Kalshis, the poly markets, did not have a very good chance of moving on. This was a 2-man race between Bass and Pratt, and after day 1, it got borne out that it was a 2-man race between Bass and Pratt, and then lo and behold, here comes Nithya Raman with all of these votes that just happen to show up 100% for her. See, and that's the thing. That's a statistic. That's a claim that needs verification, that 40,000 ballots came in, not one of them for Pratt and not one of them for Bass. That's something that needs to be able to be verified, that I need to be able to find that fact and fact check that, as it were. Could not find anything that talked about it at all. All they talked about was that Raman had leapfrogged because of their voting, all of how great they vote and how great these votes were that came in after the fact, blah, blah, blah. So, Los Angeles is a lost cause. If you didn't already know Los Angeles was a lost cause, you know it now. And this pertains to what's happening in Ireland. How does this is the paradox of the Los Angeles mayoral race and what's happening in Ireland, and technically in the United Kingdom because it's Northern Ireland, which historically had some troubles for about 30 years because you had some loyalists in Northern Ireland like the IRA who wanted a unified Irish island. They still don't have it because England's a bunch of fucking cucked bastards. They should have fought harder, they should have blown more shit up, and they might have gotten it. But I digress. Anyway, so here's what happened. How does this pertain to Los Angeles? Well, if you're on the left, you want to import as many people as you can. That's how you got the demographic changes in a place like California that have led to the humongous change in the voting and the horrific setup of California politics, not only like on the local level, the mayoral level, but on the federal level. So, in Belfast, a few days ago, you had a immigrant basically almost completely behead a native-born Irishman in the streets on video. I cannot watch the video, do not want to watch the video. This man's life was at least spared for some time by a sports instrument of some sort. I can't remember the sport. It looked like a leprechaun's cricket bat, but some dude popped another dude up, popped the perpetrator across the face, and at least was able to get the guy. I'm still not sure if the guy survived or if he's since deceased, but here's an interesting thing. Listening to the Trigonometry podcast, and they went live, and they had a guy on there from GB News by the name of Patrick Christie's, who opened my eyes to the reporting of the police. Here's what he said the police said. Initially, they said that the perpetrator was a Somali immigrant. Then they told us that he was a Sudanese immigrant. Then they claimed that he was born in Saudi Arabia and then moved to Sudan, at which point he got a flight from Khartoum to Paris to Dublin and then took a bus to Belfast after Dublin, after Ireland had said, get the hell out of here. Now it's being reported, or the latest report was that he had traveled across land from Sudan to Libya, got on a boat, made it across the Mediterranean, somehow made his way to Paris, which then he found his way to Ireland, and then to Northern Ireland and to Belfast. The point of this is, which Patrick points out, is they don't have a clue who these people are, where they're from, what they're up to. It also has been reported that the perpetrator was a Sudanese police officer. Okay. Again, like Arthur and I talked about last week, you have these people being brought to our country, being brought to Ireland, being brought to the UK, Northern Ireland, who are pieces of shit, who do not belong here, who have no legitimate claim here, and who now are creating and perpetrating violent crimes. These people should not be here. And now the Northern residents of Northern Ireland, who are technically British, which is a weird sentence, are burning shit to the ground. They are ransacking homes. They are burning buses. They are throwing Molotov cocktails. I saw the cops busted out some water cannons to try to put it down. A dude had some badass firework in which he leveled down as it like a continuous kind of mortar going at the cops, which I think is hilarious. It is funny that the cops can come out and show full force and can mobilize against the native population, but when it comes to the non-native imported population, they're nowhere to be fucking found. Does this sound familiar? This is the importation of horrific, terrible cultures. Let's just look at Sudan. Has anyone ever vacationed to Khartoum? No? Great. There's a reason why. Sudan is a shithole. It's full of shitty people. You can say that there's outside forces that have created civil wars. That's fine. But here's the thing. No one summers in Khartoum. Okay? No one's going there. They've never had a strong man strong enough to hold it down. It's a shit culture. We should not import shit cultures to the West, whether that be Europe or the United States. Same with Somalia. It's a shit culture. It's a shit country. Sure. We've dabbled there. It's been overrun by certain people, by certain countries. They were this thing at one time. They were a colony or they were whatever. Okay, not blaming that away, not explaining that away. Don't care. But you should stay there because Somalia is Somalia, right? And Sudan is Sudan. So you guys have fun. Your culture's so great and you've been so abused. Well, stay over there, abused. Don't come here. Why would you come back to the abuser's house? So none of that makes sense. So here we have it again, where you have these pieces of shit that are imported into beautiful cultures that built the entire world, that brought the entire world not only running water, electricity, and food for days, and then you come here and you ruin it. and you attack our native populations. And it's not so bad here in the United States, but in the UK, you're not allowed to fight back. You're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to voice your opinion without fear of reprisal and direct reprisal from your government who imported them. Now, we can talk about any number of things, and there's a lot of conversations happening on podcasts and different places where people are talking about, look, we have to, and you hear a lot of this happening now over in the UK and Ireland of, hey, we need to bring the temperature down. We need to talk about this. We need to vote for these certain people. We need to vote this way. But I've listened to trigonometry for long enough. I've gotten a bead on their politics and for the ruling classes, and it doesn't really matter who they elect, what party it is, what party has control of parliament. Every single side has imported tons and tons and tons of shit-ass people from shit-ass countries, which are now they've overrun them. You have people that are now indigenous British folks who are now minorities in London because they've imported so many Muslims, whether they're from Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, wherever. As one guy said, make sure you go down to your local pub and support it, because if it goes out of business, it's going to be turned into a mosque, because that's what happens to all of them in London and in the surrounding areas. And that's a terrible, bad thing, because here's the thing. No matter your feelings upon Islam or Muslims or Arabs or whatever, they're non-native to the British Isles and to the British island. They're non-native to the United States. Now, if you want to come here and be an American, that's great. If you want to come here and practice your religion, okay, I guess we can, there's certain aspects of it you can't practice because you guys are little nuts. I guess that's okay. But you're going to be Americans, or you're going to be British, and you're going to be the thing, and you're going to do the thing. You're going to contribute to the society. I think I mentioned this last week, that the social contract between in the West has been completely, it's null and void. It's over. The government does not do the thing it's supposed to do, but the people are doing the thing they're supposed to do, mainly because the government has the monopoly on force and violence. Because we can't just say, well, I'm not going to pay the taxes anymore because you're not really doing what the social contract says you do of keeping us safe and keeping a border solid from invasion, and you're not, safety, security, all of those things, infrastructure aren't happening. It's crumbling, and you're importing the third world here and going abroad and starting all kinds of nonsensical wars in which no one wants us to do. So I'm just not going to pay my taxes. What happens if I don't pay my taxes? Well, at the very least, you're going to get a bill. You're going to get fined. You're going to get a tax levy on your property, your things. Best case scenario is they garnish your wages. And the worst case scenario is that they're in fucking jail and take all of your shit anyway. So what now? If I'm in Ireland or Northern Ireland, let's take to the streets and settle this shit. The Irish in Northern Ireland have a seedy past, and it's not that far gone. They've only had peace, relative peace. The murals are still there. They've only had peace since about 1998, maybe 2000. There were car bombs. There were mail bombs. There were shootings. There were all the things that were happening because the IRA and the other loyalists wanted the British out. They wanted the Protestants out. And they wanted to be a unified Ireland. Those tactics, those people, those guys, those gals who were actively blowing shit up, actively doing things, are still around. And they have kids, and now they probably have grandkids. And I'll tell you this, they're cults of personality, and they are cult-like figures, and they are the people, again, who are on murals. And they're the people that are looked up to as heroic and fighting for the identity of Ireland. Okay? Just because Northern Ireland is technically part of the United Kingdom and England does not mean that there are no Irish there. You can say, well, that's like us going into like Mexico and going, well, this is America now, taking it over, sacking their army, sacking their capital city, and saying, well, this is America now. They're not Americans. They still identify as Mexicans, and they're loyal to Mexico. And so it's going to be a problem, and it's going to rear its ugly head. And now it's rearing its ugly head in Northern Ireland. We're on day 3, possibly day 4 of this now. I haven't checked the news feed because I've been doing this show for you beautiful people. So probably on day 4 of the unrest and burning shit, there's claims that they're going house to house and burning down migrant homes and taking people out, and that's fine. I don't really give a shit because this is what it's come to. It's come to this because the powers that be, the ruling class, the government, has not done their job. And so now the people have been pushed too goddamn far. And once you get pushed too far and things pop off, once the violence lever gets pulled, it's game on. Because now you've got total skin in the game if you're the person out there on the street doing the things you're not supposed to do. Because what lies next? You're just going to let them take you to jail? Nah, man. You're pot committed. You're pot committed at that point. And you know what, boys and girls, mainly boys, stay pot committed. It's the only way you're going to get change. You're not going to change anything through the ballot box. As Frederick Douglass once said, a man's rights lie in 3 boxes: the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. Well, it sounds to me like they're on the cartridge box over there. So what I'm saying is, if anyone has a boat, I have money, let's do this thing. But I digress. Maybe I'm getting a little too militant here. What do you expect the outcome to be if you're the ruling class and you've abdicated your responsibilities, you've abdicated any sort of sense of nationalism, the evil word of nationalism. You've sold the identity of the country in which you purport to represent. You've imported the third world. You've turned a blind eye to the immigrant population that you helped import that is ruining the country, that you're giving the benefits to. Not only is it ruining it culturally, it's financially ruining your country. It's taking jobs away from the native-born population. You've imported a ton of Pakistanis who raped and groomed a whole bunch of girls, and your police force ran cover for it. They did nothing about it. You're lucky things didn't pop off then in Rotterdam. But here you go. This is, I'm not one to say that things over in England and Europe are precursors necessarily to what happens here in the United States, but they're definitely a warning. They're a shot across the bow, if you will. And for our representatives and leadership here in the United States, the strong man that comes down the pike from your inaction here to deport people, to round them up, to use ICE, to enact the levers of power and mechanisms that will have people self-deport. Because you haven't done those things, what's coming down the pipe here is going to be pretty rough. Unless someone like, I don't know, a J.D. Vance or something like that. I know it's early, whatever. But if you don't get someone who can pot commit to rounding up thousands, if not millions of people and sending them back to the shithole they came from, this is going to happen here in the United States. But this, if it happens, what's happening in Northern Ireland pops off here in the United States. We have a few more tools that we can use that are readily available that the Northern Irish do not have. They do not have arms like we have here. They do not have the culture of arms that we have here. They do not have the know-how, the technical prowess, the training, the ability to train, the network that exists to help in the training. And yeah, we have all of that. Oh, and we have somewhere in the neighborhood of a few thousand, if not tens of thousands, of GWAT veterans that are trained in the art of war. So, what comes down the pipe here is going to be something to behold. Unless we can get some sort of leadership, I believe here we might still have a way to vote ourselves out of this, but it's very slim. And it's going to, it's an 80-20 issue, as Arthur and I mentioned last week. This is an 80-20 issue. Immigration, illegal immigration, a strong border, and deportations. This is an 80-20 issue, 84-20 against. It's an 80-20 issue. It's an existential crisis for the United States as well. We're already bankrupt. We're already hemorrhaging cash because of 20 years of the GWAT, spending money in other places we shouldn't, whether that's, foreign countries that are proxy wars, or just in Africa on nonsensical stuff, on like GMO or non-GMOs, or excuse me, on NGOs, non-governmental offices. That's where I got fucked up. All of the Doge cuts, which none of which got enacted, none of which got codified into law. We're hemorrhaging cash left and right. And Trump, with his economy, is trying to outrun the inflation and what's happening. But at some point, the bill comes due. And if you can't if you can't cut the budget, and you can't get rid of the illegal immigrant population and the people who have just been brought here to undermine our middle class, our working whites, our working blacks, our working poor, if you can't get rid of that, when the bill comes due with the budget and the lack of money, the shit that pops off is going to make, I don't know, it's going to make workers' unions and riots and all of that look like nothing. Because when you have nothing left, when it's all gone, it's all been undermined, you have but one choice. And you can vote your way into communism, but you have to shoot your way out. We all understand that. And the biggest thing here is that when America falls, the world falls. If we fall, the light of the entire world and West goes with us. There's nowhere else to go. And all of us understand that to some degree, that there's nowhere else to go. We don't have dual citizenship or dual loyalty. We have a loyalty to one country and one land. That's the United States of America. With all of its faults, it's the best bet, and it's the best place to have ever been born. It's the geographical lottery was hit when you were born here. You could have been born anywhere else in the world, on the globe, but boy, oh boy, we were born here in the United States of America. There is no plan B. I've never talked to any native-born American who thought there was a plan B in like Germany or wherever. There is no plan B. This is the only plan. There's not a plan A. There's just this. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to Ireland. I'm not going to Northern Ireland either. I'm not going to Germany. I'm not going to France or Italy or anywhere else. This is my Alamo, if you will. I stay here. This is where I'll be. This is my only loyalty. This is my only country. This is the only country that I give a shit about. I don't care about any other country on planet Earth. I only care about this one. I am inspired, though, by what's happening in Northern Ireland and the things that they're doing. Those fellas over there are doing the Lord's work. They're showing what can be done. I don't know how long they'll be able to hold out and do this, but it looks to me like there is a real movement happening there. There's a real, this whole thing has been simmering for years under, you have that, excuse me, you have that historical, like British kind of gentlemanliness, the what would you say, niceness, if you will. Not to the point of Canada nice, like they'll take you over and they'll whip your ass in a war, unlike Canada. But they still had this like niceness about them, this kind of gentlemanliness about them, which the Irish don't fully have. What's going to be interesting is to see if this spreads to the mainland of England or to Wales or somewhere like that. If this thing starts to spread outside of Belfast, this is one of those like cataclysmic events that pops off something bigger than itself. No major event has ever been signified by one specific event. I hate to inform you, even though you've been told this back in middle school and high school, but World War I did not kick off because of the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. That's not what did it. It didn't help, But that's not what did it. World War I had been simmering. It had been on the precipice for about 20 years, maybe 25, 30 years. It had kind of been there, simmering, 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 and then it finally boiled over. It wasn't like the Archduke was murdered, found out it was a Serbian, and then Serbia got taken over by the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Habsburgs. That's not what happened. It was an event that led to it, but it was not the cataclysmic event that led to it. It might have been the final, nail in the coffin or the straw that broke the camel's back. But much like what's happening in Belfast, Northern Ireland, this has all been simmering, simmering, simmering. You remember over in Ireland, I think it might have been Northern Ireland, I don't remember exactly, the crazed immigrant piece of shit who had a knife and went to a Taylor Swift dance party for little girls and just started stabbing people. And by people, I mean little girls, killing a number of them. That was another one of those simmering events, simmer, simmer, simmer. And even it kicked off some protests in Ireland, but nothing like what we're seeing now. Again, we're on day 3, possibly day 4, or we've had 3 days of this. We're possibly on day 4. God willing, we're on day 4. So it's really going, and it's really something. And by God, I hope they keep it up and affect some sort of change. I hope it spreads. That's kind of what took down the communism, took down the Soviet Union, and took down the Berlin Wall. Was it just you had one event that finally had some pull, made a change, and it just it was a domino effect. And that was peaceful. This is less peaceful. But if violence is not on the table at a certain point, when the elected leadership's not doing their job, well, violence has to be had, apparently, to affect change. And again, despite what you've been told, what your mama told you, what anyone tells you, sometimes, they'll say violence is not the answer. And then you open a history book, and you're like, oh, I don't know. I think violence might have been the answer. Violence was the answer for the Nazis in Imperial Japan. So, a lot of people said violence not the answer. Does that mean you like Nazis? Dumbass. But I digress. Last thing I'm going to touch on here is the what looks like the end of the war in Iran. I don't know, because we've had like 38 ends of the war in Iran, according to Donald J. Trump, none of which have come through. But it does look like we are very, very close to some sort of ceasefire, peace agreement, truce, whatever we're calling it. There has been some back and forth about certain things have been laid out here, certain things have been laid out there. Are we going to unfreeze assets? Are we going to give them $300 billion? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? Don't know, but it does look somewhat, it looks as promising as it has ever looked since this thing is kicked off. So, we apparently had a, was it Apache attack helicopter was shot down over the Strait of Hormuz on patrol. I find it, neither of the pilots was hurt. They were both recovered. Of course, the aircraft is gone. I do find it odd that we weren't told how it was shot down, why it was shot down, what was used, things of that nature. How far off into the strait were they? Any number of seem like relevant facts. I also didn't look that hard into it because it's I don't want to know. I don't really know if it's I do read the chat, elf support. It has a very dubious quality to it being shot down and no pilots being like seriously injured or killed. As you get shot down in a helicopter and land in the drink, I don't know. I'm glad they're not hurt or dead, but there's something very odd about it to me. It's much like, we talked about, and it was a big story for about 10 minutes about the F-15 pilot who was shot down, and we sent in special forces, and it was like 100 dudes and, a bunch of aircraft just to get one guy back, which is great. But it's like, well, wait. Don't F-15s have 2 crew members? I might have that wrong. But either way, it was like, okay, so he got shot down, and then we got him back. It's like, well, hold on. How did he get shot down? I might have the F-15 mixed up with the F-14. Um, I don't know. Either way, my point is this. Please don't post anything like super crazy, but whatever. Just comment whatever you want to comment. Just if you're nuts, I'm gonna call you out for being nuts. We weren't really told how he was shot down. Like, is it surface to air missile? Was it pilot error? Was it like ground flak? Was it where's the aircraft itself? It was just like, well, he shot down. We had to go get him. Okay. I thought we had taken all their air defenses down, and was it like a friendly fire thing? Because apparently one of the things that did come out was the fella that got shot down and we had to go rescue was one of the 3 that got shot down by the Kuwaiti Air Force, by a rogue pilot who went nuts and shot down 3 of our jets for some reason, which I don't believe anyone's really reporting on that either. But I've heard reporting that was the case. But either way, I don't know. It would be nice if we could stop the war in Iran, because the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz has not yet fully been felt yet. So, yeah. Let's see here. Elf Support says Soviet Union didn't collapse. USSR dissolved. The August coup of 1991 was staged. Yeah. It's a long-term strategy they had planned since 1961, according to KGB defector Anatoly Golitsyn. So, okay, Elf Support. So what are you trying to say? Yeah, I know the Iron Curtain came down and the Soviet Union was still there, but then the Soviet Union divulged into the Russian Federation. Not sure what you're trying to say here, bud. And then all of those Iron Curtain states basically fell after that point pretty quickly. I don't know, man. Seems like it collapsed with Gorbachev, and then they tried to coup his ass, and that didn't work. So that was staged. I could take that at face value there. And then Yeltsin came along, mayor of Moscow. There was a time where it looked like they're going to fucking kill Yeltsin, and they didn't. So I know it's probably hard to type all that Elf Support, but I appreciate what you are doing. It's an odd name, by the way. No PFP. Probably getting catfish here. All right, well, I'm at the end of this Elf Support. I do this every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. If you want to come hang out, man, my email is somewhere on. I think it's on my YouTube channel. I think it's on my Rumble. If you want to send me an email about something you want to talk about or educate me, feel free. Sir or ma'am. You're probably a sir. Most ma'ams aren't interested in history, especially like USSR, Soviet Union, Bolshevism, all of that stuff. So anyway, everybody, thanks for hanging out. Elf Support, thanks for, I think it's the first time I've ever seen you in here. Appreciate it. Like I said, man, shoot me an email or something, or hit me up on X, all my contact stuff. You can find me on X if you're not on there, or you can just comment on the episode here of Rumble. The live stream is, I'm going to end the live stream, but the episode will still stay up, so you can comment there. I am very interested in the Soviet Union, the USSR, Bolshevism, the rise of the Soviet Union in the fall, all that stuff. If you've got like an insight that I don't have or some resources, hit me with it, man. I'm a nerd for that shit, including the Mosin-Nagant 9130 there over my right shoulder. If I remember right, it's a 43 model. I can't remember, but it's a Soviet issue. Either way, everybody, thanks for hanging out. Like, subscribe, do the things, and until next time, everybody, stay toxic out there, And let's support the Northern Irish.